Good afternoon and welcome to the Sam Lacrosse Show. Happy Monday. So this week tomorrow marks exactly 1 year in which Donald Trump assumed the presidency of the United States of America for the second time. It's hard to believe that it's only been a year in some ways. So much has happened. Things that happened a year ago feel like in some cases they've happened a decade ago. So why do we feel this way? Because whether you like it, the things that have happened or not, it is indisputable that many things have indeed happened. Say what you want about Donald Trump, he's far from inactive and far from boring. But this episode is not set out to praise Donald Trump for simply acting, for simply doing things. Rather, this is going to be taking an actual look at what is actually going on. Too many people do the opposite of this, which is completely and totally unhelpful. Trump's sycophants will say that everything he does is right. Trump's deranged haters will say that everything he's doing is wrong. Instead, we, throughout this entire episode, will be asking a different question, and really the only question that matters. How is Donald Trump doing exactly? Put simply, if you were to take the 30,000-foot view of Trump's accomplishments, what he's been able to do and how he's gone about doing it, and their opposites, was the letter grade you would give him and his administration? It's a silly example in some ways, I know. But it's in many ways the only way we can accurately judge what's been actually going on. Anything deeper and you get into the weeds. Anything more shallow and you end up not being able to see the forest through the trees. Cue the deranged haters and the sycophants. About a month ago, as a big fan of Donald Trump, I would have given Donald Trump a D. I thought he was doing a terrible job on almost every front. All of the sizzle and truly great things that happened very early in his presidency had either been forsaken or hijacked by either him or those around him. He was on track to get demolished in the midterms, which would have left everyone far worse off than they would have been otherwise. However, in a surprise that I didn't see coming, I've begun to change my tune and become something I'm naturally not, an optimist. Political optimism is the worst type of optimism. It's hardly ever warranted. That said, as a true Trump supporter and someone who believes in the value-driven populist nationalist agenda that undergirds it politically, I think we might be on the verge of something incredibly special. Here are my reasons as to why I didn't outright flunk Donald Trump in my initial grade of his second term as our 47th president. First, for the most part, his staffing of several key positions has been absolutely exceptional. J.D. Vance, in my view, is the most optimistic political figure of my lifetime, even more so than Donald Trump himself. He is the future, a young, bright, value-driven alpha who I believe has genuineness in his heart. He is the heir apparent not just to Trump, but to the MAGA movement generally. In my view, it couldn't be in better hands. Remember all of Trump's quote-unquote controversial hires and appointments? Two of them, in particular, have been home runs: Pete Hegseth and Bobby Kennedy. Hegseth has been an absolute rock star as our Secretary of War. Recruitment has skyrocketed. The military missions we've coordinated have been some of the most impressive in recent memory, and I would argue all of memory. He is pushing our military to be in better shape, with better morale, with better weapons to fight with. Our military is on a rapid rise, largely due to his leadership. After some initial pushback, Bobby Kennedy, once a heated rival to Trump, has become a complete hit in his role as head of Health and Human Services. He's dramatically reduced the childhood vaccination schedule. He's potentially delivered us a cure for autism. He quite literally turned the food pyramid upside down. He's mandating the presidential fitness test again. He's dramatically reducing prescription drug costs for those who most need them. His impact is being felt now and will be felt for a very long time. And I could go on for a long time, thankfully, on a lot of these people. Marco Rubio, for example, has been my biggest personal surprise, a reformed neocon who's potentially turning into the most America-first Secretary of State ever, and the most powerful one since Henry Kissinger. Harmeet Dillon, the rock star attorney who now runs the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, is absolutely crushing it. Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, might have found the single greatest lever of American wealth creation through tariffs in generations. Time will still tell, but early signs for these folks are good. And Trump deserves credit for putting these people and more in positions to thrive. Second, Donald Trump, particularly through the use of the executive order and his remarkably effective marketing team, has crushed what used to be wokeism to dust, at least for now. He banned transgender men from women's sports. He began hounding colleges and universities about affirmative action and Marxist DEI policies and dependence on the government. He forced concessions out of big tech to get them to relent on their unending assault on American tradition. Think about the post-woke vibe shift like this. Look at what Donald Trump has forced the left to defend. Men spiking women in the faces with volleyballs and getting their nose broken in boxing rings. Exclusions from promotions via race. The lack of enforcement of the southern border. The soft on crime policies that led to the murder of Irina Zarutska, among others. Both October 7th and the genocide in Gaza. It's remarkable when you think about it, so much so that the hero of the left is the current mayor of New York City, who is proving more and more to not just be a brilliant politician for getting there, but a complete and total loon. A win for MAGA, for certain. Third, the policies that Trump initially signed, particularly in his flurry of executive orders, were awesome. Sealing the southern border within weeks and arguably days. Ordering the National Guard into D.C., Chicago, and other places. Sicking ICE agents to cities to begin deporting illegal immigrants. The pardoning of innocent January 6 protesters. These have made a massive difference. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, the return of Trump to the Oval Office has also signaled a return to American swagger. This was a welcome change from the blandness, the malaise, and the outright hatred that came from Bush, Obama, and Biden. Being an American, and even more incredibly being an American conservative, is cool now. The whole country is being swept into some form of optimism, or at least better optimism than we once were. That matters a ton, and Trump should get credit for that. But that said, here are the reasons I came very close to flunking Donald Trump. First, the number one success criteria for me when Donald Trump assumed office was the following: justice. The amount of crimes committed against the American citizen under the tyranny of the Biden administration are almost incalculable. We sent grandmothers to prison for praying. We forced nearly all private sector employees out of work because they wouldn't get the Fauci ouchie. We sent school board moms, in some cases, to prison for going to school board meetings. All of Donald Trump's closest advisors were thrown in prison. Trump himself had his house raided and almost got thrown into prison because he was apparently hiding classified documents in his wife's underwear drawer at Mar-a-Lago or something. So when Trump took the White House once again, my mentality was simple. There needed to be a reckoning. People had to be punished for what they did. Government people, particularly in positions of high authority and power, needed to go to prison. Federal prison, some for the rest of their lives. There needed to be perp walks. There needed to be public trials. There needed to be justice. Not retribution, but justice for crimes against the American citizen. And put simply, that has not happened. Joe Biden did not hesitate at all to put people who are simply his political enemies and Donald Trump's allies into prison. Donald Trump has not put a single person who has committed all of those crimes and more in prison yet for actual crimes. The opportunities have been there, but the will has not been. And I, for one, am infuriated, and I know that I'm not alone. And so why is this? Particularly because Donald Trump picked an absolutely incompetent and ridiculous team in place to run the most important department in the federal government, particularly now, the Department of Justice. His initial pick for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, would have been fantastic. Gaetz, all other things aside, is a rabid dog. All Donald Trump would have needed to do was let him off the leash and allow him to tear apart the people who stood against his agenda and for the crimes of the Biden administration against the American people. But after a ton of blowback, Trump pulled back from Gaetz. And who did he put in his place? Pam Bondi, someone with the complete opposite personality of Matt Gaetz. Compliant, passive, weak. She does not have the will to be the chief law enforcement officer in the federal government. She has made a mockery of the Justice Department. She has taken no scalps. She needs to be fired and should have been a long time ago. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino fall into this camp as well. Both of them had sparkling reputations and talked a lot of big talk before coming into the Department of Justice. Both of them, no matter how much great work they've done in the past, which should be celebrated, have been completely disgraced in their current positions. Bongino's return to podcasting has been mocked. Patel, after outright lying to Joe Rogan for 2 hours and spending time talking about flying private with his pocket rocket country star girlfriend, is a disgrace. Both of them deserve every bit of scorn they are getting, and I would argue more than that. And the biggest reason for all of this is the absolute dumpster fire of the handling of the Epstein files at the behest of Donald Trump. Pam Bondi's binder stunt will go down as the biggest political flop in modern American history. Bongino and Patel's interview with Maria Bartiromo is so disgusting it makes you want to puke. Everyone knew the whole thing was a lie, but yet they keep telling it and telling it and telling it like it wasn't. And all of this begs, obviously, a bigger question. Why on earth is this allowed to still be held up as legitimate? Who in the is the U.S. government protecting? Why is the most despicable crime you can commit, the sexual abuse of children, being covered up by the federal government, and most particularly the Justice Department? Everyone needs to be fired, but no one has been. It's inexcusable, and it needs to stop. Second, the defining issue of Trump's first year was not anything he promised: crime, immigration, tariffs, whatever. Instead, it was something that no one in MAGA ever voted for: Israel. It is the question of Israel that has completely consumed the debate on the American right in the first year of the Trump presidency, which has completely taken everyone off the balls we needed to be on to achieve what we set out to achieve. Israel's influence on our politics is a necessary debate to have. The frustrating thing about our political class, and about the Trump administration specifically, is that they're completely unwilling to talk about it. They're more interested in passing hate speech laws about it in Florida and pretending that most of their donor money came from Israeli officials, just like the ones who threw a fit at Turning Point USA right before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Oops, I said that out loud. This begs a disturbing question. Who is Donald Trump really listening to? Or if you wanted to be more pessimistic, like I tend to be, who is controlling Donald Trump? Is it his MAGA advisors? Or is it AIPAC and Israel First psychos like Randy Fine and Mark Levin? Is it his base? Or is it the Israeli government? Is it his true instincts? Or is it his donors, from Miriam Adelson to Larry Ellison, all of whom are deeply embedded within the Israel First lobbies in various ways? Americans do not know this answer, and neither do I. Donald Trump has never once answered it, which is a significant and unfortunately defining problem for his legacy. If Trump doesn't pivot attention away from Israel, a country that has nothing to do with America's best interest, his legacy will continue to be ruined. He will squander all of the progress he has made. And unfortunately, I don't see this happening at all. Third, Donald Trump is slowly but surely drifting into neocon territory, particularly when it comes to foreign policy. He is surrounding himself more and more with the most demonic and hawkish members of Congress out there on some of his most important issues. Lindsey Graham, Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, among others. All bloodthirsty monsters, all of whom want nothing more for the renewed power of the American military to colonize and police the world. And the wolves and the sharks are indeed circling. Bombing Iran and potentially funding the overthrow of the mullahs, as we speak, have been neocon wet dreams for years. The current saber-rattling over Greenland, Cuba, Colombia, and obviously Venezuela, which we'll get to, have been as well. Remember when Trump said he'd end the Russia-Ukraine war in a day? I do. How is that working out? In addition, Trump just ordered the national defense budget to increase to $1.5 trillion. For what, you might ask? I think we all know the answer, if we're honest enough to say it out loud. Fourth, perhaps the greatest unifier of Trump's incredible 2024 coalition was the promise of DOGE, a government efficiency organization meant to dramatically cut government spending and waste. Put simply, a complete and massive failure. Spending, like it has under all presidents, to be fair, has gone up under Donald Trump, putting more burden on the taxpayer to fund it, even though many things around the economy and tax legislation are showing promising signs. Congress has not helped with this either, to be fair, but under the quote-unquote promises made, promises kept slogan that Trump ran on, this one certainly did not happen. Fifth, and most damningly of all, in my view, Trump has turned his back on and alienated his core voter base with all of these and more decisions. This is a death sentence for both any political movement and the politician that is attached and pioneered that political movement. You need to dance with the girl you brought. You can't just trade her out on the floor for someone you suddenly find more attractive. Not only is it tasteless, but it's also morally incomprehensible. Yet Trump has done this time and time again in the last year. How do we know? Look at the repudiation of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, and Chip Roy. They are all MAGA to their core, Green is from Georgia, Massey is from Kentucky, and Roy is from the Hill Country in Texas, right where I live. They all wanted simple things. No more wars, better wages for workers, a focus on the homeland, and politicians who would stop lying to them, aka the MAGA agenda. And Donald Trump has slammed the door in the face of all of them. Why? Because even though Trump has done much good, he can still resort to being an immature and petty bully who steamrolls people who don't agree with him. But the thing is, these people do agree with him on mostly everything, actually. If Trump's ego continues to alienate the most America First members of Congress he has, what message does that send to the rest of us? Trump is doing the exact same thing with his new coalition, burning bridge after bridge in hopes of appeasing the people who put him in the White House, most specifically his big money donors on K Street and in Silicon Valley. Remember the broadcasters that all jumped on the bandwagon? They're teetering. The record number of young people that went right, particularly young American men, they are as well. Particularly on issues like affordability and government transparency, something that is a requirement of American young voters, I being one know that, Trump is absolutely flailing and losing them. So yes, just as there are plenty of reasons for optimism, there are also plenty, and I would argue more, reasons for pessimism about how to give a grade to Donald Trump so far. He will always have both his haters and his sycophants. The key to answering both is to be fair enough to understand what is actually going on. A very hard thing in a world that is seemingly going more and more crazy by the day. My D for Donald Trump up until very recently was something I thought to be very fair. However, in the last month, I've begun to change my tone on my initial pessimism. I believe now that I'm seeing the bigger picture, the grand strategy for what Trump has always wanted to do. And if I'm right, it will be some of the most brilliant political maneuverability the world has ever seen. I believe that Donald Trump, through all of the turmoil, is setting the stage for something absolutely huge, something that could very well bring out the golden age of America. In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses issues his final address to the Israelites before they enter the promised land under the leadership of his protege Joshua. Moses, now forbidden to enter Israel because of abusing his power as the leader of the Jewish people, has devoted his entire existence to serving God. He has given so much. He has been through the ringer time and time again. He is the first messianic figure pointing to Jesus Christ for this reason. Even though Moses isn't perfect, he has done much to move the cause of Christianity forward. God knows this and decides to reward Moses with something not totally satisfying, but satisfying enough. Even though Moses can't enter the land he has spent his entire recorded time trying to reach, God allows him to see it from the mountains. He allows him to see the fruits of his labor before his journey ends, to see what he has helped to build and create before Joshua, the man he is passing the torch to, takes up his mantle. I believe that, obvious biblical connotation aside, Donald Trump is a Moses-like figure. He will not see the fruits of his labor come to fruition, but he is sowing the seeds of something we cannot possibly imagine, something that could very well create something lasting and great. So as a non-answer to my own proposed question, I don't know what grade I'd give Donald Trump. Much like anything into the future, it's both uncertain and unknown. The only way out is to be honest, and the only way to be honest is to tell the truth, no matter how good or bad that truth might be. Okay, so what does this mean? What does this shift in this MAGA agenda, this Trump presidency actually mean? How are we supposed to interpret all of this? And it really clicked for me really after the Maduro raid, which we'll get to in a second. But I think the Maduro raid was very evident of where Donald Trump's head is, where the administration's head is on this. And I think for me, and this was initially very shocking to realize, and I think it's going to be very shocking to have this conversation, going forward. But the main shift for me was realizing that Donald Trump, as far as I'm concerned, I've never talked to the president, I have no idea what he's thinking, but this is what I'm thinking, this is my best guess, is that Donald Trump is not running America as just a nation anymore. He is not running America as a solo country anymore. Instead, he is running it and turning it into an empire. He is turning it into an empire. America, to Donald Trump and to the Trump administration, is not a nation anymore. It is not just a nation with borders. And obviously, America still exists, and the nation hopefully will still become the homeland. But we are entering a new era of American expansion, a new era of American empire, a new era of American dominance, and the way that we look at the world on the world stage. So even though the homeland is prioritized, and I do believe that Trump cares about all of those things, he's going about it in a different way, which is I'm going to put America first by seeing America as not just a landmass and a country and a group of citizens and everything else, but in order to best protect that, we cannot be just focused here anymore. We need to have a broader worldview on things. And it's not just about the homeland that this matters for. It is about everything that supports and surrounds that homeland. This is not globalism, at least I don't think it is, because that would be the complete opposite of the populist nationalist movement that we're doing and what I believe Trump believes in. I truly believe he believes that. But we can't be insular and just look inside of our borders to fix that problem. We need to look outside to put America first. It's an odd way of getting there, but I think that is what is going on. And I think we have indicators of this, by the way. I think this is why the defense budget is getting increased so much. I mean, it was, I think, around $800 billion before now, and it's essentially doubled to $1.5 trillion. Donald Trump just demanded that last week, and Pete Hegseth, I'm sure, is more than fine to spend the money, and that's why that's going up so much. If you remember, very early in the administration, Marco Rubio, I believe his first visit was to the Panama Canal and to South America. Why did he go to South America? Why didn't he go to Israel? Why didn't he go to the NATO nations? Why didn't he go to Ukraine? He really hasn't spent much time over there at all. It's really all about shoring up our relationship with South America, and he's been involved with a lot of other things. And Rubio is Hispanic American. I believe he's Cuban American, and he knows, that region, and he's very passionate about that region. He always has been. He's wanted regime change in Venezuela for a while, which is why he got his wish with the Maduro thing. And so, in addition, I think this is why Trump made that trip earlier last year to the Middle East, and he skipped talking to Israel. He talked to all of the other nations in the Middle East that are really on the come up. He talked to Saudi Arabia. He talked to Qatar. He talked to Dubai, the Emirates, the Emiratis. He talked to all these different nations, and he's cozying up to them, just as we just took out Maduro in Venezuela, for oil, for trade, for democracy, everything like that. And I was wondering why that was, but I think it's because of this American empire that Trump is trying to form. I think that's clearly what's happening. And so America is now not anymore just a nation. It is a nation that is controlling a broader empire. And so that's very different from what we expected the America First agenda to be. And I do think that this is right, which is why I'm talking about this. Even though I'm very uncomfortable with a lot of it, I do think that this is an inevitability with all the changes in the global world order that's happening. We're going to talk about a lot of that later on. But I do think that this is a necessary evil that we're going to have to get comfortable with as people who are fans of this political movement, as I am. And so I don't think that we're going back to just nationalism. We're going back to a nationalism through empire building. And so, okay, that's fine. So what does an empire need? That's the biggest thing. And I think this is also evidence in what Trump is doing in the geopolitical movements that are happening. So if you want to be an empire, and there have been empires throughout the world. You look at the Mongols, you look at the Romans, you look at the Egyptians, you look at the British, you look at all the Chinese dynasties, everything like that. All empires have three things in common that they need to be an empire. Empire is very different than a nation. An empire is way spread out. They have outposts. They have things there. They have governors and leaders and people installed and communication networks and things. It is very, very hard to run, which is why most attempts at empire fail. But to run an empire effectively, and this has been throughout the history of the world, empires need three things. They need money, natural resources, and people. money, natural resources, and people. If you do not have those three things, you do not have an empire. And Trump is in the process of acquiring or in the process of building up those three things. More money, more natural resources, and more people. So I think, honestly, this was proven when Trump was, I don't know if he was asked about it or if he just outright said it. Either way, he said it out loud, which is, I think I can respect the transparency in this. When he was either asked or said that the reason he took out Maduro was essentially to make Venezuela a colony of America. He said, we took out Maduro for the oil. And I was like, whoa, he just kind of said it out loud. And, people are saying, there's, all the people that are saying, I stand with Ukraine. They just want the rare earth minerals. I just want to, go in and, we want to defend Israel or whatever. They want, to do all the things over there for the properties and the oil and all the natural resource that's over there. And Trump just came out and was like, yeah, we took out Maduro because we want the oil. And I'm like, okay, at least we're finally being honest about it. Like, at least we're finally telling the truth about what is happening, because that's all empire is. That's all that it's about. It's about natural resources. It's about getting things to help feed the empire, because empires need a lot of things to make them work. And that's also why he's looking into Greenland and he's looking into Cuba for similar reasons. If I had to make a prediction, I hope this is peaceful, and I pray this is peaceful, but Venezuela, Greenland, and Cuba are going to be American colonies in the near future. They're going to be outposts for the American empire. I hope we can acquire them economically or diplomatically or something. Canada is going to be this way too. I don't know if we'll make Canada a colony. I really hope we don't, to be honest. But it's in the similar vein of that. They have a lot of oil up in Canada too. And so land, which is a natural resource, oil, a natural resource, as well as the people on those outposts and colonies, the people of Greenland, the people of Venezuela, the Cubans, everybody else like that, seem to be fans of Americans. I don't know, but they seem to be, from what I've seen and what I've heard. These are all levers for increasing the prosperity and the longevity of America, especially if you want to go in the direction of empire. And all of these things, oil, money, people, natural resources, land, are needed to fuel the American empire. If we do not have those things, if we do not have natural resources, if we do not have people, if we do not have means of jet fueling our economy, the empire will collapse in on itself, like the Roman Empire did, like the Egyptian, although God destroyed the Egyptian empire, but all empires fold because these three things begin to fall apart. And when you look at it from this lens, this is the only way I can make sense out of the last year. This is the only way I think you can rationally and logistically make sense of the last year. And when you look at it from this lens, I think really everything that Trump has done makes sense if you're looking at it from the lens of we are now building the foundation for the future of the American empire, not just in our nation, but in nations that we deal with and surround us. From tariffs to the military strikes, from him distancing himself from NATO and from the weak allies in Europe. We are seeing the formation of a new world order. Peter Zeihan talks about this all the time. The end of the post-World War II order, where the quote-unquote Western allies, United States, Europe, Australia, I think is involved in that, Canada, people like that, that's going away. Because Canada is in a state of decline, Europe is falling apart, and Donald Trump is an alpha. He wants to be aligned with people who are strong, which is why he's going over the Middle East, which is why he's going to South America, which is why he's doing all of these things that he's doing now. He likes people that can be allies to him that are strong. And Europe is very weak. Canada is very weak, which is why we're distancing ourselves from the Europeans, which is why we're basically threatening right now at the time of this recording that we're just going to annex Greenland. And the Danes, who own Greenland, or I think they're a colony of the Danish people, of the Netherlands, will not be able to do a thing about it. They won't. He knows that. And so Donald Trump knows in his bones, and I think the people that are closest to advising him, that the world is changing and a new world order is coming in. This is not a conspiracy. This is, I believe, what is actually happening. And this is what Peter Zeihan writes about. This is what a lot of global geopolitical analysts and experts and writers have written about. And I think this is happening. And it's going to be a lot of change, and it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. It makes me really uncomfortable talking about it. But the post-war world, the post-World War II order, defined by Europe and America as, again, those quote-unquote Western nations, is fading away. And Trump knows that. And I have been to Europe. I'm going to go there again in about 5 months for a conference, and I'm happy to go. I think, Europe is fine. I mean, it's not my favorite place in the world, but I am of the firm belief, and I think J.D. Vance knows this as well. If you remember, he gave that speech at the Munich Security Conference where he basically just said that you guys suck for like 30 minutes and you're enemies of free speech, and why is the British government throwing tens of thousands of people in prison for social media posts and everything like that? Why are you doing all the stupid stuff around climate change and natural gas and prices and immigration? And I think basically Trump and Vance and a bunch of people in the administration think that Europe is weak and irredeemable, which I think they're not wrong about. I think that's actually right. So they're going away from them. And so what does this mean for America? Well, first and foremost, we got to get used to it, plain and simple. Because the scary thing about all of this is that once you make the decision on empire, once you make the decision to go and become an empire, there's no going back. There is no going back. We are pushing all our chips into the center of the table. And I think the crazy thing is that this is something we need to do because this is the way the world is going geopolitically. And we're going to talk about this later too. There is a alignment of nations that are coming together. There are alliances that are being formed around the world in different countries, geopolitically, a bunch of different things in that regard. And this is happening in real time right now. It's happening with Russia, China, Iran, all the BRICS nations, and the United States needs to be ready for that. It is not an option not to be ready for that. Because if we aren't and we're caught flat-footed, that is going to be that's the end of the American experiment, as far as I'm concerned. And Donald Trump, in a weird roundabout way, this is the most America first thing we can do. And so what I would argue in defense of Donald Trump, even though a lot of this makes me very uncomfortable, if I were to take it at its most charitably, maybe this could be totally wrong. I don't know. I don't know the president. I've never talked to the president. I don't know anyone around the president. I've never talked to anyone around the president. But if I were to be charitable and argue on behalf of this strategy, this is a proactive and preemptive move to put America first, so we can ensure our survival as a nation and a world power. And so I believe that we can still advocate for America first, for MAGA in this place and in this movement, and we should do that. But in this strategy, in this context, it's just going to look a bit different. And it's not that it's wrong, because I don't think that it's wrong. I think some things about it are wrong, but I don't think the overall strategy, if this is indeed the strategy, is wrong. And so we should obviously check this, and we should obviously be very, very careful with the way this is going, and we should correct when things go off kilter. But I think this is the way forward. This has to be how it goes down. And if it's not, then I'm wrong and egg on my face. But I think we just got to get used to it. And this is what America First looks like going forward. And I believe that it's right. I don't know. I could be wrong. But I believe that it's right, and I think we need to get behind it. And the reason I believe that this move toward American empire is happening is obviously the Maduro thing. We got to talk about the Maduro thing. So earth-shattering news as far as I'm concerned that we executed a military operation in which we plucked Nicolas Maduro, the communist leader of Venezuela, out of Venezuela with his wife. And they are now in New York City federal prison. I don't know if it's the same one that Diddy and Sam Bankman-Fried are in, but that's a party. If they're in that, I think it's the Met prison that's up there. So can you imagine like Maduro and Diddy and Sam Bankman-Fried all in the same cell block? That's pretty crazy. So that's anyway. But this, Tucker was talking about this, and he said that this capture of Maduro is one of the most world-changing events in recent history, and I agree. Nothing like this has ever happened in my lifetime, and maybe ever, that the United States just said, you know what? We're going to go in. We're not going to wage a war, even though it could be considered a war, and I understand where people are coming from there, but we're going to execute a large-scale military operation that has been planned for months to pluck a world leader out of his own nation and just throw him in prison for crimes against the American people. And if you guys have not watched at least the highlights of the conference with General Raisin Kane and Pete Hegseth and I believe Marco Rubio and Donald Trump, you need to watch it. It is like, because this is from a pure red-blooded American perspective. And when we captured Maduro, I was like, oh no, this is going to pop off and I don't like this. But when you realize the level of detail, the level of strategy, the level of planning, the level of competence from our military in this operation from a pure red-blooded American perspective, this was awesome. Awesome what we did. I mean, it was in many ways, and I never thought I'd ever say this, but it was incredibly encouraging to see this in a way. And so, like, when you hear that there were 150 planes in this operation, we did an EMP attack that took out their electricity, and the moment they started firing at our planes, we decimated their whole defense system, but we just went into Maduro's mansion and got him out of there and strung him up and flew him out of there and everything like that. I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. I was like, I couldn't believe that we could do this. I didn't think that anybody could do this. Like, this is like a Mission Impossible, James Bond, style rate. Like, I've never heard of anything like this. And I was like, I didn't even know this was possible, that people could do this. And I thought our military was really strong, but I was like, holy crap. This is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And this was also I think this was a very clear sign to the rest of the world of a couple of things. First and foremost, like I mentioned, our military is far and away the best in the world. No one can touch what we did with Nicolas Maduro. Chinese can't do it. Russians can't do it. Nobody can do that. Nobody. They don't have the air support, the air power, the special forces training, the men, the strategy, the leadership. They don't have any of the money, the technology. They don't have any of it. And so that was a sign to China, to Russia, to Iran, to anybody in the world. Hey, we can do this to you too. We can pluck you out of the Kremlin or of Beijing or of Tehran or anybody else, and we can come get you. And we can do this to anybody who gets in our way, no matter who we are. It's the old FAFO thing that Trump has been putting out there, which has been, I think, very funny in many ways. But the F around, find out slogan that the military is slowly adopting, which I really love. And it's true. Like, hey, you wanna yell, and that clip of the White House where they did the whole speech where Maduro apparently was giving a talk about where Trump was all doing the saber rattling of like, we're gonna go and end this guy or whatever, and he's saying, come get me, you can't get me, and then they actually did go get him, and he's now sitting in federal prison. He got that, the handcuffs and the Origin sweater on and everything like that. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And so, but when I woke up and I saw this on my X feed, I was very conflicted. I'll put it that way. And so I was very against this operation in my old mindset. In many ways that I still am. I don't like regime change because in almost all cases, it destroys things. It destroys things. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Yemen, the Ukraine. It doesn't work. And so I know that we're And I don't like, by the way, that we're saying that we need to run Venezuela. Like, what does that mean? Like, are we going to run the government? Are we going to fund the government? Are we going to pick and install leaders and things like that? And in the narrow mindset of Venezuela, I was like, this is not a good thing. I don't like that we did this. This is going to be destructive. Things are going to happen, blah, 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 blah. But, again, if I'm going to be the most charitable I can be to Donald Trump and to the administration, Glenn Beck was talking about this, and I think that this is a very smart analysis, and I think that this is where this is all headed. It's not about Venezuela. Even though we instituted it in Venezuela, we obviously took out the Venezuelan president or prime minister, whatever they call the leader of the country. We obviously took out the leader of Venezuela, and he's now sitting in a New York penitentiary awaiting trial. But this is not about regime change in Venezuela, even though we obviously did regime change in Venezuela. This is about something bigger. And I would argue this is about global regime change. Global regime change. Trump is playing chess, not checkers, which explains in a weird roundabout way, why taking out Nicolas Maduro was the most America first thing we can do. And that sounds nuts. And it sounded nuts to me when I first heard about it. But this is what I mean. And again, I'm going to go back to that comment, that mask off comment, that I think it wasn't even really a mask off moment because Trump just admitted it. He didn't get caught in a hot mic or something. He just went out right and said it. It was that moment in the press conference when Donald Trump straight up told everybody that they did it for the oil. We need the oil. We went to Venezuela for the oil. We're going to get I don't know what that means, by the way. I would assume we're going to send our oil companies down to Venezuela. They're going to start refining it, technology, innovation. And if we give the Venezuelans jobs and everything like that, it could end up working out great. I don't think it's going to be that simple, but that's what I think is probably going to happen. But Trump, at that press conference, we did it for the oil. And I'm like, oh, you did it for the oil. Thank God you told us for once. But the question is why? Why did we do it for the oil? And it's because Venezuela sells most of its oil. I believe Venezuela has the richest oil reserves in the world, right outside of Venezuela. Outside of maybe Saudi Arabia. I think it's definitely in the top 3 in the world. Venezuela has a massive untapped oil reserve. Trillions of barrels of oil. Venezuela sells that oil, in particular, to one country. They have one big customer, China. Venezuela sells most of its oil to China, America's biggest geopolitical enemy. It's not Russia. It's not Iran. It's not Israel. It's China. Period, point blank, full stop. China, because of this American adventurism and focus on the Middle East and Eastern Europe and different parts of the world, has been rapidly colonizing South America via economic soft power. That's why the Marco Rubio visit to the Panama Canal was so huge. China had a massive presence at the Panama Canal. They have a massive presence and economic dependence on Venezuela, on other nations in South America, on Brazil, on lots of other things. And this is why Donald Trump wants to annex Greenland as well, because Greenland is essentially a massive landmass that also has a lot of oil reserves and land and natural resources and things like that. It doesn't have a lot of people on it. I believe it's only 30,000 people that live on Greenland, which is owned again by the Danes, by the Netherlands. He said this out loud at the press conference. He said China or Russia cannot get a foothold in Greenland. They can't. And he said the reason for this was because they will have a foothold in our hemisphere. They will have an outpost right by our country. They will be able to put missile bases there. They'll be able to put military legions there. They'll be able to mine for oil there, etc. This is the same thing that's happening in Iran. We want to protect our new allies in the Middle East. It's not about defending the homeland, but it's the hemisphere doing what is the now buzzword that's been around for about a year, ever since Trump took place, but Hemispheric defense. We've heard that a lot recently. And that's what this is about. This is about globally protecting our hemisphere, defending America by defending the hemisphere. Because we cannot have hemispheric defense if China is all up in South America and creeping up towards our southern border, funneling fentanyl, funneling illegal immigration through the southern border, patrolling our oceans, doing all the other things with Greenland and with Venezuela and Cuba and everybody else. And Venezuela sells most of its oil again to China. China imports everything. I believe 80% of China's food is imported. Most of its oil is imported. China is not a nation that produces anything, really, except for base textiles. But in terms of raw economic power, it's very limited in terms of what it can do. And so by taking the oil in Venezuela, whatever that means, I don't know what that means, but by saying that we want the oil in Venezuela, we are cutting off our biggest geopolitical enemy, China, from what it needs most to survive, what any nation needs most to survive, other than food and clean drinking water and things like that, which is oil. That is what hemispheric defense means. And this is what people are talking about when they talk about the revival of the Monroe Doctrine, which is now called the Monroe Doctrine. Donald Trump has renamed it, as he does with a lot of things, in his own name. So the Monroe Doctrine was built out through one of America's earliest presidents, James Monroe, where he basically said America will be the dominant presence throughout our region, our hemisphere. And I was listening to Rich Lowry talk about this on Megyn Kelly's show a couple weeks ago, where he said that the Monroe, I didn't actually know this, the Monroe Doctrine says America should make an effort to change a foreign nation, even if they have economic instability. And I don't know if that's true. Rich Lowry is more of establishment Republican neocon, that National Review type. He runs National Review. And I like Rich Lowry, but I disagree with him on a lot of things. But I don't know how far that goes. But this is what people are talking about when they're saying the Monroe Doctrine, hemispheric defense, Monroe Doctrine, everything else. So Donald Trump, through asserting American dominance in the hemisphere, not just in America, but through the hemisphere, is attempting, and I don't know if he's going to succeed or not, but this is what he's attempting to do, to bend the world to his will in order to prepare against greater instability and war in the future. This is a way of mutually assured destruction, I'll put it that way. Because if every side builds up land, oil, resources, etc., hey, we can have a war if you want to, but it's gonna get real ugly real fast. Lots of people are gonna die. Lots of people that are, like this, that, or whatever, etc. And so, again, Glenn Beck was talking about this the other day. I thought this was really interesting. And I think this is true because, Glenn is a historian and he is very in tune with this stuff. He said something that was very alarming in a way, but also something that I think is true. Glenn Beck said that we are in World War III right now, today. We just don't know. We either, one, just don't know it yet, or for those that believe that, which I believe that, it's just not a hot war yet. We're not shooting at each other yet. We're fighting proxy wars, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, Iran, all of those places. We're fighting proxy wars, but it's a cold World War III. We have allies building up stockpiles, everything like that. And if we build up our allies, if we build up our arsenal throughout all of these things we've been talking about throughout this whole show, this gives us the best chance to prevent a hot war, which is something we all should want. Because World War III destroys everything. We all die in World War III. With the technology that we have, watch some of the footage in Ukraine with drones. It's like you're watching a Transformers movie. We do not survive that at scale as a world. And I think if the Ukraine war turns into anything that is instructive and useful, it will be that World War III is a bad idea and we shouldn't do it. And so that is, I think, the real thing that we can learn from the Maduro thing, is that it's not regime change, it's global regime change. We need to weaken our real enemies by taking out some of our proxy enemies. And I don't like it. I'm almost as hardcore isolationist as you can get. I don't like war. I don't like interfering in other people's democracies. But if it turns out that this is a way of perpetuating the America First agenda in a roundabout weird way, I know this is really weird, then it's something that needs to be done. We need to do it. And we just got to get comfortable with that. I have to, you have to, we all have to. And so, as mentioned, one of the things that empires need, I would say maybe the main thing that empires need, other than that, well, actually natural resource, I would say, but I would say it goes right in tandem with that, is money. And the American economy has been one of the biggest stories of Trump's first year. Trump is an economic president. He had a great economy his first term, and he says, I'm going to go back and rebuild everything and everything like that. And so this past year, if you're looking back throughout the first year of the Trump administration, there has been a lot of tumultuous movement when it comes to tariffs, trade deals, etc. And I am not an expert in any of these things. I like talking about macroeconomics. I think it's really interesting about the way this affects people and things and everything like that. But people are not feeling the effects of the good economic things that are happening. There are a lot of good things happening. A lot of these trade deals we're striking are really good. A lot of the stuff with tariffs, with the revenue that we're raising, are really good. But that doesn't matter because people only care, as they should, about their own lives and about what's going on in their life and with their family and with their, whatever they're doing. And people are not feeling the reprieve of the economy that happened when Joe Biden destroyed the economy, when inflation spiked, when grocery bills went crazy, when utilities went up, when we stopped mining for oil and gas and we drained the strategic petroleum reserve, everything like that. So even though the numbers are down in some ways, there are still some good things happen. And I think this has potentially very good things to happen with the American economy. I think we could be in the midst of an economic explosion, not an implosion, but an explosion of growth in the American economy. And this is really important, not only for the empire stuff, but this will be the single biggest factor in the midterms that are coming up in November. And the midterms are really important because the midterms will determine whether Trump has life outside of the initial 2 years of his presidency. If Trump keeps the House and keeps the Senate, we can keep going and keep pushing the MAGA agenda for another 2 years. But if we don't, then impeachments, arrests, those are going to happen again. It's going to be very, very quick. It's going to happen again. And we cannot allow that to happen, if at all possible. However, even though the economy is not looking good from some perspectives, and it's not, I'll fully admit that it's not. I call a spade, but we are seeing some pretty miraculous signs in regards to economics. For example, oil and gas prices are plummeting right now. I believe it's 13 out of the 50 states in America have gas prices that are under $2 a gallon, which is what Donald Trump promised in the campaign. Gas can be under $2 a gallon. That's remarkable considering where gas prices were under Biden. Mortgage rates, this came out yesterday at the time of this recording. Mortgage rates are falling under 6%. They're down a whole, I remember my starting mortgage rate when I bought my house in the summer of 2024 was around, 7%, a little under 7%. I think I have around a 6.65% interest rate. The general mortgage rate is around 5.9%, and the average was above 7%. So under a year, mortgage rates have fallen over a percentage point, a whole percentage point in under a year. Remarkable. Home prices are about to come down significantly, in my view, because of a lack of buyers. So people have a lot of prices on their homes. I think those prices are going to have to be slashed. There's a bubble in the housing market right now. So home prices are going to go down, which will have some have some effects and some back and forth, some churn in that. But no one's buying homes, which means that the prices are going to have down if they want to move supply. If the owners of homes want to move supply. Trump just made also a massive move to ban large-scale investors from buying up single-family homes. Because the home market right now is entered into a monopolistic phase where large asset management companies are buying homes, jacking the prices up, and crowding out first-time home buyers, young people, couples, young families from buying homes. That will bring prices down significantly, which will stimulate economic growth. People will buy more things. Consumerism is up there. We still have a consumerist economy. That will happen in the housing market very soon. That will have a massive effect on family formation, for one thing, which is a whole separate issue. But on the economics, it will be a massive boon if this actually goes through, which I'm praying and hoping that it will. And trillions of dollars in investment moving back to the U.S. through tech companies, chip manufacturers, things like that. So there are a lot of building blocks that are being set up on the bottom of this. I think the economy is being set up for a lot of success in the future. I don't know if it's going to be this year. I pray that it's going to be this year because we need the midterms to go well. But regardless, I think that the economy is being set up for a booming next couple of years. I know all the numbers don't look great now. I know a lot of smart people are saying the opposite of this, and I'm just, what do I know? But that's what I see. And so from all these data, what is the story that we're going to tell? I think it's primarily two things. One, the tariffs are working. Tariffs are working. Lots of revenue is coming into the U.S. via the tariffs. Lots of investment is coming back to the United States because of the tariffs, because it's more expensive to do business overseas than it is to do business here now. And we are bringing other countries more and more to the table than ever before due to the dependence on the U.S. for economic purposes. Because I think one of the most revealing things that happened in the first part of Liberation Day, if you guys remember that, when they rolled out all these tariffs to other countries, is how many countries tariff us. And so I think what the tariffs was kind of saying we cannot have free trade without having fair trade first. You bring your tariffs down, we'll take our tariffs off of you. And so it's opening the playing field to the dominance of the American economy. More and more countries are coming to the table, more trade deals are getting struck, more revenues flowing into the United States via tariffs. This is a very good thing. We're stimulating the economy by bringing in more revenue. Even though we have a spending problem, we don't have a revenue problem because of taxation. But that's also helping. Secondly, Donald Trump is a very pro-business president, obviously. He's a business guy. He likes talking with CEOs and CEOs whining and dining him and him doing the exact same and the opposite. That's why him and Musk got along so well before they blew up. And now I guess they're getting along again. I don't know. But Trump being a very pro-business president is freeing up American business and American corporations, even though I'm very hesitant about that. And I'm still very hesitant about that, especially with tech companies getting so involved with our government. But it's freeing up American corporations, American businesses to do what they need to do both overseas and domestically to get more profits and to employ more people and to sell more things. So the American economy is getting unclogged by lots of things, which is a big deal, I think. I think it's a very, very big deal. So for two reasons. One, again, it is not an option, we need a massive economy to run an empire. We cannot have just the American economy to run an empire. The American economy is really powerful, but we need more horsepower. We need more firepower on our side. And this is what all of these economic alliances are doing, and all of this kind of colonialism that we're doing with Venezuela and Greenland and a couple other things. This is what's going to be a boon to all of this. So from a logistical sense, we need a massive economy to run an empire. And two, this will dramatically help Donald Trump's chances in the midterm elections come this November. We need the economy to be good if Trump wants to keep power. He knows that, which is why he's pivoting smartly to the affordability message that got Mamdani elected in New York City. He's doing stuff, look what he's doing now. All the stuff with housing, mortgage rates, everything like that. He knows that he can't go underwater when it comes to this stuff. And if the economy turns around, which I'm hopeful that it will, and I think it will, maybe not as soon as we're wanting it to, but I think it will. And obviously things like the Epstein stuff sort themselves out. I think the MAGA movement and the right are absolutely going to dominate these next couple of this election cycle and into the future. And it should, because borders fixed, crime is down, homicide rates down. If the economy starts to blow up, if Americanism comes back, which it already has, that's a pretty winning combination. That's a pretty good message to sell to the American people. And I hope that the economy does turn around. We're seeing a lot of good signs, I think, but it needs to continue. And I think it will continue, which is a good thing. So I'm praying for that. And I think that it's really interesting what's happening with our economy, because I think it truly could boom. Okay, so we got to talk about this. We'll end the plane with the Trump Marjorie Taylor Greene feud. So the MTG and Trump feud has absolutely torn apart the American right, as it should have. I'm not saying it shouldn't have, as it should have. So Marjorie Taylor Greene used to be Trump's closest ally in Congress, and now they hate each other. Like they can't stand each other from what I'm seeing. And by the way, they are both drama queens who are hungry for attention. That much is very clear, at least to me, which certainly plays a role in all of this. And this is what people are saying, is that this is not a good long-term solution if this continues. Or it could be, and people aren't just seeing it, which is my contention. Again, I'm taking a very optimistic view. It's really hard for me to be an optimist, but I'm going to be an optimist here. So let's look at both sides of this feud and see what's actually going on. Let's read the tea leaves here. So Marjorie Taylor Greene's biggest problem with Donald Trump right now is that she believes that he is betraying the core MAGA people like her. Again, if you don't know, Marjorie Taylor Greene was a rally person. She was a Trump rally person back when he started campaigning in 2015. She went to the rallies. She owned a construction company, and she's like, finally, someone who's not lying to me about a bunch of things, finally someone who cares about me and the people that work for me, etc. And then she became a politician and now is one of the most influential political figures in America. So that is Marjorie Taylor Greene's problem with Donald Trump right now, which she's not totally wrong about, by the way. As mentioned, I think Trump is doing that too, and I think that that's wrong. On the other side, this does not get talked about enough either, or at all, much more than Marjorie Taylor Greene's side. Donald Trump's biggest problem with Marjorie Taylor Greene is that I don't think people give him a lot of credit for this. My dad reminds me of this all the time. Donald Trump is working very hard to put out a lot of fires that were started by the Biden administration. Wars and economy stuff and home buyer stuff and geopolitical stuff and things like that, trade stuff. And he's like, woman, what more do you want from me? What more do you want from me? I'm doing everything that I can. I know, I'm sorry, you're not my first priority of what I'm going to do in all of this stuff, which, by the way, Trump isn't totally wrong about that either. And he's like, you're ungrateful. You don't like what I'm doing. I'm working my butt off for this agenda, everything like that. He's not wrong about that either. Let's be fair. He's not wrong about that either. So both of them are right and both of them are wrong. Two things can be true at the same time. So we got that straight. But I believe that this feud, like a lot of the ones with Trump, is a temporary thing. I don't think that Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene are just going to hate each other for the rest of their lives. I don't believe that. I believe this is a temporary thing. And I also believe that it's a good thing, because Marjorie Taylor Greene is right about her core essence. Marjorie Taylor Greene is as MAGA as it gets. That is 100% true. And this tension with Donald Trump will force him to defend his MAGA positions. And also, she will be forced to defend her positions. Conflict and debate, free speech is good. It was good with the Tucker Carlson and Fuentes interview. It's good with this Marjorie Taylor Greene Donald Trump thing. It's good with the Vivek Ramaswamy, Steve Bannon kerfuffle over the H-1B visas. It's good about Israel. It's good about everything. This spat between the two of them is going to prove to be a good thing. And it will help us going forward if we're able to solve these issues in greater detail. And I'll make a radical claim here. I think the best thing that could happen in all of this is that Marjorie Taylor Greene runs for president in 2028. And I think she's going to. And I think she'll do better than a lot of people think. And just like everyone was counting out Vivek Ramaswamy in the 2024 primaries, he still beat out Mike Pence. He put the wood to Nikki Haley. He put the wood to Ron DeSantis, as he should have. And what Vivek did, and I think that it was a kamikaze campaign to fall on his own sword to push the agenda towards the nationalist, populist, America First, MAGA agenda that defines the Trump movement and away from establishment republicanism. I think that's exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing right now. Pushing the party towards MAGA, falling on her sword, kamikazing her campaign by pushing the agenda towards Donald Trump. And I think she's playing 4D chess. I could be very wrong about this, but this is what I think she's doing. Because establishment republicanism is making a comeback under primarily Ted Cruz, who is openly saying he's running for president against J.D. Vance in 2028. And if I could, Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Matt Gaetz, is a rabid dog. And I think letting her off the leash to go at all of these people that are going at MAGA is a good thing. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene will win. I could be wrong. I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene will win. I don't think she'll beat J.D. Vance. But she will be a candidate that drastically helps their cause. And I think she's doing that right now, actually. So for all of the name calling and this and all the stuff that comes around with it, I think that Marjorie Taylor Greene and the Trump feud is a good thing. And it's all this part of this evolution of MAGA, America First, everything that is doing to bring in this new golden age that everyone keeps talking about. And it's going to be choppy, it's going to be bumpy, it's going to be rough. And I could be wrong about everything I've just said for the last hour. But I don't think I am. I don't think I am. But I could be. Who knows? Thank you all for watching. Own the day. Open your mind. And I'll see you guys next week.